All right, hi everyone. Thanks for coming to our presentation today about LRAP, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, and Loan Repayment for Public Interest Grads. This is a hybrid presentation, and we have our financial aid and LRAP advisor on the call today, Rosanna Hill-Thomas. She'll be answering questions in the Q&A or the chat if you see that, and then there'll be time for questions at the end. Okay, today we're going to talk about repayment plans, Berkeley Law's Loan Repayment Assistance Program, federal public service loan forgiveness, and then how to use all these three different programs together. I'll give you some of the latest updates about student loans and PSLF, and then some action items and resources that you can use, and then we'll do our Q&A. Let's first talk about repayment plans and strategies. This is basically how much you're going to pay each month over time on the loan and how long you're going to be in repayment for. If you borrowed loans for law school, you're definitely not alone. I have a lot of grads and students come up to me wondering if their loan debt is the highest I've ever seen. Definitely not. It's very, very common to have loan balances of upwards of 200K. And really, no matter how high your loan debt is, there's definitely going to be a strategy for you. You don't need to start paying loans when you're in law school or during the summers, and you actually have 6 months after graduation where you don't need to pay either. But once you do begin repayment, you're going to be making a choice. Are you going to pay off the loans or seek loan forgiveness? There are these two main repayment strategies. So paying off the loan means you're going to pay the entire amount of the loan plus the accrued interest, which is going to result in higher out-of-pocket costs. Your monthly payments are going to depend on what your loan debt is and how long you're going to take to pay off the loan. And this usually means that it's easier to manage for people who have high incomes or low loan debt. Alternatively, you can get your loan debt forgiven, which means you don't need to pay off the entire loan. Depending on the forgiveness plan that you pick, after a period of repayment, you get the remaining loan balance forgiven, which means that you have lower out-of-pocket costs. Basically, your monthly payments are going to depend on your income, which makes them smaller and easier to manage. And that means this is a good option for people with lower incomes, higher loan debt, and anyone working in public. There are a number of federal repayment plans that you might pick depending on what your loan strategy is going to be. So if you pick the standard 10-year repayment plan, your monthly payments are going to be based on your loan debt, and they're going to be in a fixed amount. So if you pay this amount every month for 10 years, your loans are going to be paid in full. Now, there's also something called an income-driven repayment plan. So instead of being based on your loan debt, your monthly payments are based on your income. They're going to change from year to year as your income changes. And then typically, this is not going to result in your loans being paid off. But how much of your loan debt you end up paying is going to vary depending on your loan debt and your income. You could see your loan balance decrease, stay the same, or even increase over time, depending on those two factors. You may be seeing ads or emails about refinancing with a private lender, and they would use the terms consolidation or refinancing. This could be an option for you if you're thinking about like paying your loans off really aggressively and planning to have a high and stable income. It can be favorable if you're trying to like lower your interest rate or get a payment schedule that matches up with your financial goals a little better. But something to be really cautious about is that these private loans aren't eligible for programs like income-driven repayment, PSLF, and LRAP, or other federal benefits. There's definitely some pros and cons to each of these repayment strategies. So if you're going to do the standard plan and pay off your loans in 10 or fewer years, the pros are that your loans are paid off entirely, and there's really no complicated paperwork you need to fill out. The cons are that your monthly payment could be really unaffordable, and you are likely going to have higher out-of-pocket costs as you pay off the entire loan and interest over the life of the loan. If you're doing income-driven repayment and loan forgiveness, your loan payments are more affordable, you'll have lower out-of-pocket costs, and you can utilize our LRAP program, which is great. But the cons are there's definitely more paperwork as you have to annually fill out forms for all of these different programs. You have to keep records. You have to communicate with your loan servicer a lot more often. And like I mentioned, it could result in your loans growing over time if you're paying a smaller income-driven repayment plan amount. So pairing IDR with loan forgiveness is sort of the best strategy here. These are some examples about how much your monthly payment would actually be. With 100K in student loan debts to pay off the loan in 10 years, you'd pay around $1,100 a month. If you're looking to lower that, you can sign up for an income-driven repayment plan. And with a 60K income, you'd pay around $340 a month, and an 80K income, you'd pay around $500. Now, if you have a $200,000 student loan debt, standard plan would jump up to around $2,200 a month. But even with that higher loan debt, you'd still pay the same amount if you're in an income-driven repayment plan because it is based on your income and not your loan debt. Now let's move on to talking about Berkeley Law's LRAP, which is the program that helps you make these loan payments that we're talking about. LRAP is a program that supports Berkeley Law JD grads working in public interest jobs. And there is no limit to how many people can get LRAP. As long as you have eligible loans and employment and income, you can receive LRAP funding. It provides funding to help you make your monthly income-driven repayment plan payments. And the support comes in the form of a lump sum forgivable loan that you get every 12 months and is set to cover the upcoming 12 months of payments. You actually enter for the first time within 3.5 years of graduation. That's the deadline. But once you are in the program, you can utilize up to 120 months of LRAP support. And that's cumulatively, so you're welcome to go in and out of the program as needed. And then you have this 15-year term after your graduation date to use those 120 months whenever you'd like. You need to have federal direct student loans if you want to participate in LRAP. Those are the loans you see in Cal Central. They're called Grad Plus loans, Stafford loans, subsidized or unsubsidized loans. If you have private loans or other types of federal student loans, those aren't going to be covered by LRAP. There is no maximum amount of loan debt, which means it doesn't matter how much law school loan debt you have. And also if you have loans from undergrad or another degree that you have, you'll be able to include that in LRAP. You have to enroll the loans in an income-driven repayment plan to get those to qualify for LRAP. The employment that you should be in if you're interested in LRAP is law-related public interest employment, and you need to work greater than half time. So for most people, that's nonprofits or government, but clerkships count. I mean, that's considered government, but there are some caveats to be aware of. So if you're clerking for 2 or more years, then there are no post-clerkship job requirements for LRAP, and you're welcome to go on your way and do whatever job you'd like afterward. But if you are clerking for less than 2 years total, you do need to enter public interest employment right after that to be eligible for LRAP. And the intention of LRAP is to support people who are interested in public interest work and not someone who's going into a clerkship for a year and then public interest or plaintiff side firms, unions, international jobs that qualify for LRAP, but these jobs do not qualify for PSLF. So you want to be sure that you have another plan for your loans. If you're making $80,000 a year or less in income, you receive 100% LRAP support. Then if you're making over 80K, you receive a prorated amount of support where you're contributing 35% of your income over 80K to your loans, and then LRAP covers the rest of your monthly payment. Of course, if you're married, there are some different rules. We'll average your 2 incomes. If your spouse makes more than you, we'll look only at your sole income if your spouse makes less than you. There are some dependent deductions to consider and other types of income we look at too. And then there's a 100K income cap. Here's some examples of how LRAP support actually looks in practice. If you had a $400 monthly payment and a 70K income, since you're below that 80K threshold, you'd have a $0 out-of-pocket contribution, and LRAP would give you $400 a month. With that same monthly payment amount and a 90K income, you would pay $290 a month out of pocket due to the LRAP rules to your loans. And then LRAP will give you $110 a month to make up the rest of that payment. With a $600 monthly payment and that 70K income, still your support is $0. So you're getting $600 in LRAP. And with the 90K income, that out-of-pocket contribution is the same because it's based on your income. You're just getting more LRAP support to make that full monthly payment. LRAP generally has around 225 to 300 people in it at any one time. And about 50 grads from each class year end up entering LRAP within that 3.5-year deadline at any one time. So it is a highly utilized program. And if you're interested in public interest work, I definitely encourage you to come speak with us and figure out how we can make LRAP work for you. All right, let's talk about public service loan forgiveness, which is going to help you deal with your remaining loan balance. PSLF is a 10-year forgiveness program that was created by Congress and is run by the Department of Ed. It's to encourage student loan borrowers to pursue public service careers. There are these 4 main requirements: making 200 or 120 qualifying payments on qualifying loans in a qualifying repayment plan while working in qualifying employment. And the great thing is, these payments and this employment doesn't have to be consecutive, it's cumulative. So you're welcome to participate in other types of employment or have periods of unemployment and still qualify for PSLF. Let's look at these 4 requirements a little more in depth. The same loans that qualify for LRAP are the loans that qualify for PSLF. They're direct federal student loans. If you refinance your loans or have private loans, those are not eligible for PSLF. If you have these older types of federal student loans like Perkins or FFEL loans, those are also not eligible, but they can be converted so that they are eligible. So definitely come talk to us. You may have heard of this new PSLF waiver. Some of these requirements are being temporarily waived due to that waiver, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. You need to have your loans in a qualifying repayment plan. So all of the income-driven plans qualify for PSLF, and so does the standard 10-year repayment plan. But you can see how if you did that for 10 years, you wouldn't have a remaining loan balance. There's some other plans we didn't talk about today, like graduated or extended plans. Definitely don't go with those plans if your choice is to do public service loan forgiveness. And again, some of these are being waived for a period of time. Now, here's an important one: the employment that qualifies for PSLF. It has to be a 501c3 nonprofit or government at any level to qualify. There are the rare circumstances of a non-501c3 qualifying for PSLF, but they have to provide a very specific type of qualifying public service, and they get turned down a lot. So I recommend sticking with the C3 if you're able. You also need to do this employment full-time, which means at least 30 hours a week, or your employer's definition of full-time, whichever is greater. The great thing is what your job duties or your position or your title, whatever that is, it doesn't matter, only your employer, which also means that if you eventually leave working in law, you can still qualify for PSLF. And there is no income cap or salary requirements. Finally, you need to make these 120 qualifying payments on your loans. They have to be in the correct amount. So whatever your plan is telling you to pay, they've got to be on time and made while working in qualifying employment and made while enrolled in a qualifying repayment plan. And they actually have to be due. So you can't make payments quicker than 120 months. You can't make a payment while you're in school because nothing is due. So you will need to wait till you're in repayment. What you're going to do once you are actually in repayment and working in qualifying employment is submit something called a PSLF form annually. You'll submit it to the Department of Ed, and that'll tell them that you're working in qualifying employment and allow you to get confirmation that you're making progress towards PSLF. This really is a retroactive process where the Department of Ed is going to count up payments that you've already made. So there's no need to do this right after you graduate. It really makes more sense to wait a year or wait till that first job is over. And you start applying for PSLF once you've actually completed those 120 payments. So again, you don't need to apply for PSLF now. You'll do it in 10 years. As it stands right now, there's no partial forgiveness. So you have to do the 10 years and you'll get 100% of your loan balance forgiven. You still need to be working in qualifying employment when you apply for PSLF and wait for that application review. But something really great is if you actually end up making more than 120 qualifying payments, you can get a refund. I know PSLF can be very scary given the media that we see about it, but it is a program that works. Berkeley law grads and LRAP participants have gotten total loan forgiveness through PSLF, but there's some things you really want to be aware of before committing to this program. You know, you're going to need a dedication to 10 or more years of public service employment. Sometimes it takes a little longer than 10 years if something has gone awry. You need to be able to learn and follow those PSLF requirements very closely. You need to check in on your loans pretty frequently to make sure you're doing everything right. Keep really good records, you know, initiate a dispute with your loan servicer if you have to. And then I know there is this mental toll of having these loans that are potentially growing over your head for 10 years. And you want to take all of this into consideration before deciding to pursue public service loan forgiveness. If you are thinking about it, we definitely have a lot of tips to follow. Here are some main ones. You know, you really need to know and follow all those requirements exactly. Don't just take our word for it. Please peruse the regulations on the Department of Ed website and make sure that you know what you need to do. Really use your legal skills to advocate for yourself and understand those regulations. Read the communications from your loan servicer and the Department of Ed. They're going to be telling you what to do, and you want to make sure that you're doing everything they ask on time. I definitely recommend enrolling in auto pay so you never miss a payment. You don't want something to happen where you miss a couple months and now all of a sudden your total time to forgiveness is extended. And then you're going to do this annual process of recertifying your IDR plan, using this thing called the PSLF help tool to help you track your payments and submitting the form and documenting your payment history and other communications. And you should definitely track all of this on your own. You know, don't just rely on what the Department of Ed or what the loan servicers are saying because they sometimes get it wrong. My best advice is to document everything and just keep on top of your loans. I've been talking about public service loan forgiveness, but there are these other forgiveness plans built automatically into all of the income-driven repayment plans are 20 to 25 year forgiveness plans, which would require you to make payments on an IDR plan for 240 to 300 months. This is an option for people who don't have the income to pay off their loans, but then aren't pursuing a public service career. But the very, very negative things about this are, one, you'd be in loan repayment for 20 to 25 years. And two, it's considered a taxable event. So when this loan balance that has been potentially ballooning for 20 to 25 years is forgiven, it is considered taxable income that year that you have to pay taxes on. PSLF is not a taxable event, which is great. And so I definitely recommend either pursuing the standard 10-year plan or public service loan forgiveness. Okay, so how do you actually use all of these programs together to manage loan repayment? To sum everything up, we have the income-driven repayment plan, which is this federal program to help you figure out what your monthly payment is. We've got Berkeley Law's LRAP, which helps you make your monthly payments. And then we have federal public service loan forgiveness, which is a way to obtain loan forgiveness. Now, all of these programs have different eligibility requirements, different applications, and you can use one, two, or all three of the programs at any one time, depending on what works for you. I always recommend using LRAP if you're eligible. Please take the money and help you reduce your out-of-pocket expenses. But if you're not going to do PSLF for whatever reason, I would definitely recommend paying more than what LRAP is giving you, because you don't want to see your interest accruing and your loans growing if you're not going to be doing loan forgiveness. And just to be aware, like if you're not doing LRAP, you can still do IDR and PSLF, and you can still come talk to us about those programs if you need guidance. You know, there's many different ways to utilize these programs. If you're working in government and you're planning to do that for 10 plus years and you're making under 100K, great, use all three. If you're working in government for 10 plus years, but you're making over 100K, I recommend using income-driven repayment and PSLF. You're not eligible for LRAP, but you are eligible for those programs. If you're doing public service work, but you're not going to be doing it long-term, I would use income-driven repayment and LRAP, but you want to pay extra if you're not going to get your loans forgiven. And that would be the same thing if you're doing a public interest firm or a union, another job that doesn't qualify for PSLF. And then maybe your job isn't law related, but it is considered public service, a 501c3 or in government. Use IDR and PSLF without LRAP. Essentially, there are many different ways to use all of these different programs, and I would encourage you to come meet with us to figure out which ones are going to be best for you. Okay, so the latest data we've seen is that over 70,000 borrowers have had their loans discharged through public service loan forgiveness, a program called temporary expanded PSLF, and the new PSLF waiver. And that's discharged over $5 billion in student loan debt. The reasons the Department of Ed tells us that people's applications have been denied are that 82% of applicants don't have qualifying loans that have been in repayment for 10 years, and 14% of applicants don't have 10 years of qualifying employment, or at least haven't documented that by the time they're applying for PSLF. If you see these low PSLF success rates, I would say it's because historically PSLF has been badly administered by the Department of Ed and the loan servicers. Early on in the program, they definitely didn't make clear or even misled borrowers about which loans and repayment plans and what types of employment qualified. Obviously, the program can still be confusing to navigate, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a law degree. And then servicers do make mistakes, and you'll have to navigate those or even be aware that a mistake has been made. And that can be pretty difficult to manage or intimidating, again, if you don't have a law degree. The great thing is the Department of Ed is actively fixing a lot of these problems. So we have this temporary waiver that was introduced last year that allows prior ineligible payments to count. We've got temporary expanded PSLF, which was created back in 2018, which allows borrowers enrolled in the wrong repayment plan to get their loans forgiven. And then lots of improvements are on the way right now, simplification of PSLF, making employment certification more automated, reviewing a lot of applications that have been denied, and improving communications with borrowers who are eligible for the program. There's a lot of servicer transitions happening right now and heightened scrutiny from the Department of Ed and from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which will hopefully improve servicing. And then there's also this negotiated rulemaking process happening right now at the Department of Ed, which will improve PSLF and income-driven repayment. So we see those success rates increasing, and they will continue to increase. I mentioned this PSLF waiver, which if you're in repayment right now or had loans before law school could apply to you. It means that a lot of these traditional PSLF requirements have been waived for a period of time. So that from when PSLF started on October 1st, 2007 through October 31st of this year, any payment made on any federal student loan while working in qualifying employment is counting toward PSLF, even if it was the wrong loan type, wrong repayment plan. If the payment was late, it's counting. If the payment was only a partial payment, it'll count. So if this seems like it applies to you, you definitely want to make sure that you are submitting all PSLF forms to document your employment before that waiver expires. If you have the wrong loan type, you need to consolidate that before that date. And then you need to make sure if you were in the wrong repayment plan that you're switching that over before that date as well. To reassure you about PSLF, it's really not going anywhere. It's definitely on steady ground right now. Past proposals to change it up have included grandfathering provisions, and you have signed a master promissory note that mentions PSLF. Obviously, there's pretty widespread support for PSLF and now for student loan reform and mass student loan cancellation generally. So if you have federal student loans and you want to do public service or public interest jobs, I would encourage you to think about PSLF instead of, trying to go to a job where you're going to pay off these student loans. Obviously, that's your decision about how you're going to manage this, but PSLF is a program that can work. As a future lawyer, you're definitely well positioned to be the most successful with PSLF out of many borrowers, and lots of law grads are successful in obtaining PSLF. You can definitely be successful too, and our office is here to help you along the way. Some other updates: we're currently in a COVID forbearance where there's been no payments due and there's been a 0% interest rate on all loans since March 2020 until May 1st of this year. What's been great is that you've had no interest accruing on your loans since March 2020, whether you've been in school or in repayment. And anyone who is in repayment has had these $0 payments that they've made count toward PSLF, which is essentially 25 bonus months. So this is a huge benefit of having federal student loans versus a private or refinance loan. Anyone with private loans didn't get these COVID benefits. So another reason to consider keeping your loans federal student loans. We may see that forbearance extended again. So keep an eye out on what's happening, and we'll keep you updated as well. Okay, if you're interested in LRAP and PSLF, I advise you to meet with an LRAP advisor the spring of your 3L year, especially, you can meet with us anytime, but as you are preparing to graduate and you know how many loans you've borrowed, it's definitely the best time. You're going to have a 6-month grace period on your loans where there's no payments due. And then, if you're planning on taking the bar, I say apply for income-driven repayment after that's over. Apply for LRAP about a month before repayment begins. So in October, the fall after you graduate. And then by the time that repayment begins that winter, you should be in your qualifying repayment plan. You'll have your LRAP check and you'll be ready to start making payments. Every year, especially if you're doing LRAP and PSLF, you want to have these set of actions that you're ready to do every year. So you're going to recertify your income-driven repayment plan. You're going to apply for a new LRAP contract. You'll apply for forgiveness of your previous LRAP contract. You'll submit a PSLF form that I was talking about to document your employment and your payments. And then you'll be downloading and saving your loan records to build up this PSLF record that you're keeping. Things you can do now: you can log into your federal student aid account if you haven't already. That's where you'll see all of your loan types, their balances, their interest rates, get a handle and a lay of the land of what's going on. You can see who your loan servicer is and make sure that you have an account with them. Definitely keep your contact information up to date, as they'll be sending you things as you enter repayment. And then a credit report is where you'll see anything like a private loan if you're wondering if you have that or not. Our office is here to help you. If you're interested in LRAP, PSLF, want to talk about loan repayment, definitely make an LRAP appointment. Having an LRAP appointment with us is required before entering LRAP. So again, 3L spring or maybe after your graduation is a good time to come talk to us. And then please know that you can come talk to us, 10 years from now. If you have questions from PSLF, feel free to reach out. Our LRAP website has all of our policies. We have a calculator, a lot of PSLF tips there. So review that if you're able. Your loan servicer will be the one to be the expert on your specific loan account. So if you have questions or concerns, that's who you'll reach out to. And that's also where you pay your monthly bill. And then federal student aid, which is studentaid.gov, that's where you apply for income-driven repayment, submit PSLF forms, and submit the PSLF application eventually. So that's like the PSLF IDR expert. If you end up having a dispute with your servicer, maybe they've done something wrong or interpreted your PSLF payments in the wrong way, you can always escalate with them first. But if that doesn't work, there's a number of ways to escalate this. You can file a complaint with the Federal Student Aid Ombudsperson. You can file a complaint with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, your state's Attorney General's office, or even like your state's financial protection or consumer protection office, like California's new Department of Financial Protection and Innovation. So lots of places to go if something goes wrong. There are a ton of nonprofits and other organizations that are also working on student debt. I definitely encourage you to check out the Student Borrower Protection Center, Student Debt Crisis Center, Equal Justice Works, and Access Lex for advocacy opportunities, webinars, other tips about managing loan repayment. And then if you're wanting to learn more about PSLF, we're hosting a few more webinars this spring. We've got an alumni panel of Berkeley Law alums who have received PSLF. That'll be on March 14th. We've got a panel of student loan law experts coming to talk about the latest PSLF updates on April 13th. And then we have a PSLF hands-on workshop telling you how to actually go through these different processes on May 23rd. And then that is all that I have today. Anyone here have questions or in the Q&A? I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, we've got a couple. One I left for live, Amanda.
Okay.
And then there's another one I just have yet to get to. So you can go ahead and do those live if you'd like.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are 501c4s or campaigns eligible for LRAP? Yes. As long as you're doing law-related public interest work, that is included. So yes, that's not precluded from LRAP at all. So I answered that live. Can you attempt to have loans forgiven via PSLF and for some reason you don't qualify? Are you still eligible for the 20 to 25 year IDR forgiveness option? Yes, you are. I would say this is probably unlikely because if you're attempting to do PSLF and you don't qualify, generally you'll just see what the problem is and then apply again. So unless you were just like in totally the wrong type of employment that whole time, it's probably that you would just apply again later, qualify for PSLF before 20 to 25 years. But yes, while you're making progress towards PSLF, you're also making progress towards that IDR 20 to 25 year forgiveness plan. That's answered. Any other questions today? Okay, I think I'm gonna, oh, I got one. Okay. Can a lawyer who works for a private firm that predominantly does civil rights or prisoners' rights, disability rights, employers' rights, but also commercial lit receive LRAP? So yes, I would encourage you to talk with us. We have a program called the Low Bono program. What it does is allow people who are working in these types of plaintiff side civil rights firms qualify for LRAP. There's essentially two qualifications that you have to be aware of. The first is the subject matter. What you've talked about here is, does the firm predominantly do this type of work, traditionally public interest work, or providing resources to underserved individuals or communities? And then the second part is the firm's funding structure. So the firm and the employee, which is you, has to do at least 50% of the work on a reduced fee, court awarded fee basis, pro bono basis, that type of funding. So if you're thinking about those two pieces, if you're meeting both of those qualifications, then you can qualify for LRAP by working for a civil rights or plaintiff side firm. So you may want to reach out to us or reach out to the firm that you're thinking about working for and asking them maybe how that funding structure looks or what percentage of the work is civil rights or commercial litigation, and see how that aligns with those LRAP rules. Okay. Can you refinance with a private loan servicer partway through the 10-year period if you start earning too much income? Yes, you can refinance with a private lender whenever you want. If you are participating in LRAP or IDR or PSLF for a few years and you realize you're going to be making a lot of money and don't want to do that anymore, you are welcome to exit and refinance and start paying through that private lender. You'll just be leaving and losing out on those benefits. Okay. I'll give it another, 15 seconds, but I think that's all we have right now. Okay, thank you all so much for coming to this presentation. I will put up this recording on the LRAP website eventually. Please reach out if you have questions or want to make an appointment. Thank you.